Yep, thanks, Jack. Thanks for the introduction. And welcome, everyone. Welcome to our first actually in-person event for AppSec Meetup, which is now joined with OS Sydney after 2-3 years of COVID. So we used to have some in-person meetups before that, but for the whole this time, we had to be online. It's good to have some people in person and online. And okay, so I'm Sareh. I'm working in Atlassian for over 2 years now, and I used to be an application security engineer for about 5 or 6 years now already, after doing my PhD and being a developer for some time. So it's like a bit combination of security and development and research and everything. So I try to keep the research mindset when going to the AppSec world. And this is not my work, or this is not exactly what we're doing in Atlassian, but this is something that I'm going to talk about that we are trying to achieve also in Atlassian and working towards that as well. And my hope is, after going through some discussions that I'm going to bring up today, my hope is to get some discussions in the room and some suggestions from everyone, or some even ideas or the things that you think that may work better in the application security world and in the security review of AppSec and software applications that we have always changing in this time. So what I'm going to cover tonight is, first of all, talk a little bit about security review. And because this is like a term that we hear it a lot, but what we really mean by security review, and also talk about some process that we can probably think of having this using for doing the security review of applications and software applications, and then some ideas on how we can scale it in these companies that we have like 4,000 or even more than 4,000 developers, and how we can basically being able to do security reviews for all these projects and features and new softwares that emerging every day. And then to wrap up, and hopefully some good discussions at the end that every one of us can have some key takeaways for tonight. So what is security review? So what we believe in AppSec, I believe it's not just probably me. So what we believe in, not just Atlassian, I think in the AppSec world, is when we have a new software, or the software that's been built every day, we want to identify the ones that probably have some risks. So this is very, it's not really an accurate risk that we can define, but something that we really want to look into closely, and we want to identify the bugs and vulnerabilities before they go into production, because when they go in production, we know it's open world, and then there's a lot of hackers, and there's going to be a lot of incidents happening. So we try to find some process to identify these vulnerabilities before production, which is basically the shifting left, try to go into the development lifecycle. So when we identify them, then we at the same time, we want to, when we do the security review, when we run the security reviews, we want to promote the secure by designs that's, could be unique to the company, or could be in like frameworks that's available, globally for everyone. So there are 3 steps: identifying the risky ones, finding the vulnerabilities, or even recommendations, giving recommendations to the development team, and then promoting the secure by default. So that's the whole concepts of the reason that we want to do security reviews. So what we think of the process that makes us, able to run security reviews of software projects, I think I probably miss, oh no, that's right, I didn't miss, is different steps. So the first step, find out a way to identify the projects. It could be different for each company. It could be different for each organization based on the ways that they handle the projects internally. The second step, we try to run a risk assessment, like a quick one. Try to understand what's the risk of any of these, and what are the ones that we want to pay more attention than the other ones. And then this third and the fourth steps are basically depends on the results of the risk assessment. So if we find them somehow risky, we probably want to do some quick review, because if we have like hundreds of projects every every week, we cannot really review them all. So we want to have like a quick way of doing the review on those. And then if we see some real risk that we really need to go into more details and the research more, investigate more, then we want to do some detailed reviews on those, or even do some security testing on some of those features. So we want to do them step by step to be able to cover all the projects that we have. So if we look into the software development lifecycle and where any of these steps are located, so of course it's not like an iteration. In security we cannot really do it every sprint, but even all those projects and features, they have like a project that kind of can map into this software development lifecycle. So we want to identify the projects as soon as possible, as soon as they probably created. And then run a risk assessment when the requirements is known, and when even the design is a bit known, so we know exactly what's going to happen, but it's not implemented probably yet. And then after the risk assessment, we know probably there are going to be some risks if that's the case. So we want to do the quick review when we have the design ready. The perfect world is it's not probably implemented yet, but think about it definitely before the production. And then the detailed review and security testing, if required, it comes after that when there are some more details ready about the project and the code. And testing definitely goes at the end when the project is ready to be tested. So they're going to go in different steps and different timelines. Okay, so how do we identify projects? Again, it's different for each company. So every company has some ways and some means to take care of the project. So it could be Jira, it could be, because like we do it in Jira and Atlassian, but it could be some other places that you have like a project central. So if that's the case, the best way is having an automated system to basically pull the data from them and contact the owner of the project. So if that's the case, if not available, which is probably in most of the cases could not be available, then that could be some manual interaction. So you have to have like a service desk or some place for people, for the project owners to start and initiate the process. But okay. Now you're going to see my VPN. Where did it go? Sorry about that. Where did it go? I need to start.
It's a full screen share, wasn't it?
I need to split screen. Sorry about that. Share screen again. Yeah. Okay, so we have identified the projects in the way that's possible for our organization. Then we want to run a risk assessment. So the risk assessment has to be light. We want this to be done on all the projects. We don't want to go through too many details because this is not the possibility. And even in some companies, everything has a project. For example, in Atlassian, we have like for moving chairs, we might have a project too. We might have like projects for an event or something. So these all go to the same place. So we want to have some indicators at the beginning, some light questionnaires. So something about asking about if the project that they're working on is, first of all, of course, software development. And if there is changes to authentication, authorization, like security controls, basically. If they are handling sensitive data, for example, or if it's internal and external app, or even if this is not really an app itself, but it's important for the other applications, for example, it's a proxy or a gateway or something. So we want to get some idea about the application at the first round, and then basically based on that, decide if there is any risk, do we want to look closely or not. So one good tool for that could be GoSTL. GoSTL is developed by Slack, and I think it's largely used in different organizations. So you can basically get it from GitHub and customize it based on your needs. So there are different. Okay, so there you could see, for example, something like this with GoSTL. You can basically just ask the first question if it's something that needs a security review, because they really, developers themselves, they usually know if there is a need for security review in the first place. So that's a good thing, good indicator that there are probably going to be some risk. So that's good to ask that in the beginning. And also there are like, for example, if there is any changes to authentication authorization, so if that's the case, it's probably high risk. So that's probably enough at the beginning for us. Or it's not authentication authorization, but probably it's a major, implications for business. It has some major implications for business. Then we kind of think, okay, this could be medium risk. Or this is not authentication authorization, for example. This and it doesn't have a major implication for business, and it's like a prototype or internal only application. So if that's the case, then probably it's a low risk. So it's not always 100% correct, but it can give us a good idea of the risk of the project itself. So you can start using with GoSDL, or you can do some changes and bring on some business rules from your company inside that, but something similar to that, very lightweight at the beginning to basically start and initiate the process. Okay, in GoSDL, you can go a bit deeper and go to the component and get even detailed recommendations of each of the security controls inside that. But I think that this level probably is enough for the first round of security risk assessment. Okay, so the next round could be the quick review. We want this to be quick. We don't want to go through too much details. Again, out of those 100 projects that we had in the first round, we might end up with 50 of those medium, or even more than 50 of those medium and high risk. So we can't still go through them all in this and in too much details. It's not the capacity that we have. So what do? Then we try to come up with some framework, some platform that we can basically quickly review the most important details that we want to know from that application. We want to know some technical details that we are interested in, like about the coding, the stack, the coding the stack, and basically some security controls that implemented in or going to be implemented in that app. So if you remember, this quick review is supposed to be somewhere at the beginning or somewhere in the middle of the implementation. So they already should know what are the security controls and how are the security controls that that development team is going to implement in this round. So get some ideas about the controls, and then the good thing probably to be done at this level is a light threat modeling. When I say light threat modeling, I really mean light. I don't really mean an hour or so of doing threat modeling. Basically, just like even 20 minutes or 50 minutes on just thinking about the threat scenarios that could be like possible for this application. For example, is tampering could happen for this one? For example, can someone do tampering? Can someone spoof the users here? Can someone impersonate someone else? Or is there any means for privilege escalation for this one, for example? Is it even applicable for this application or not? So basically just thinking about threat scenarios, having this security hat in mind when thinking about the threat modeling. So that's probably something that could be done in half an hour, half a day, for example. So we want to get the input from the development team. It's not the security person going and find out about all this by themselves. This is like definitely the inputs should come from the development. Even the threat modeling part is something that the development team is totally capable of doing that when they knowing what are the sort of threats that they need to look into and think about. What we want to get out of this quick review is basically a better estimate of the risk, because now we know more about this application, so we probably can have a better estimate of the risk. And then probably the most important one is identifying missing or incorrect implementation. So for example, they want to have authorization or authentication, and you have some standards already in place in your organization, and you can easily see if they are really following the standards or not. Or for example, a very common one probably could be secret storage, for example. You definitely ask them, are you storing any secret or any password or any API key or anything, and how do you do that? So you get to ask these questions, and it could be like a platform, it could be like prepared questions already. So we want this to be a template already for us ready, which is probably customized for that product. So it could be in some companies, you may have different products. You might end up with having different, templates for each of those products, but it is at high level. You know what are the exact things that you want to look into, but there are some security controls that needs to be checked at this level. And when you do that, you're going to come up with some security requirements probably at this stage. You have some recommendations already. So you find out, for example, they're not using Vault, for example, for secret storage, and you have this recommendation for them. Or you may find out that there's no dust protection, for example. There is no rate limiting. So that's the time that you exactly make this recommendation to the team. So you might even end up finding out and discovering some security bugs. It depends at the level of the development that they are, but that's a lucky gain if you get to that point. So, and then the other thing which is probably important at this level is you know some more information about the application. You have some risk assessment, and then you can think of what's next. What can we do next? Do we really need to do some security testing, for example, because you identified some threat scenarios and you kind of thinking out, okay, so they're not really following the authorization model or the guideline that we provided. Do we really want to go and do this testing later on? So you identify the exact part that you need to test in future. Or you feel like, okay, it's a big feature. I can't really go through all the threat scenarios in this short amount of time. I really need to go deep into the threat modeling and identify all the trust boundaries and all the connections between those. So that's the time that you have a better understanding of, can you do that in future, or can the team even do that in future? So it's just like some recommendations you provided to them. So there's probably no need for future intervention because they are fully capable of doing that on their own. So that's why I think this phase is very important, because as much as we want this to be quick, that has a lot of values as well. Then you might so some good advice on the things to be checked as like security controls to be checked is, of course, authentication authorization, especially if there are some platform services or defaults provided internally and guidelines internally. And then if they're using any cryptographic algorithms at any stage, so you want to know what are the algorithms and libraries they're using, what do they do, for example, for secret storage and communication events. So even you may find out that it's not even using a secure channel, they're not using HTTPS, for example. So that could be a case. So that's something to be checked as well. So the other things that you can check is security configurations, as I mentioned. For example, dust protection. Do they use rate limiting, or what do they do for rate limiting? What do they use for that, for example? Or what do they do for logging? Is there any? Are they following the security standards for logging? Are they logging, any sensitive information of the user inside the logs? Because that happens a lot, honestly. And then even checking the configurations, like we are very lucky enough that they are implementing CSP, so checking the configuration to make sure that it's been done correctly, and headers and things like that. So these are some sort of the controls that can be checked in this level, the details. And of course, dependency upgrade is very important. And we all seem like for J and things like that, we want to make sure that all the libraries up to date. So some key points like this, we want to be checked at this level. And of course, the answer could be provided completely by the development team. This is something exactly in their focus area, basically. Okay, so we might end up to do some detailed reviews after that. As I mentioned, for example, you feel like there's been a lot of threats to go through. You couldn't really go through them all in that session, and you really feel like that is definitely worth having a complete threat modeling and discussions. Then that's the time to bring that up. And or you might see that, okay, the design of this app, this is like a new product completely, and the design needs to be reviewed completely by an architecture and all this, for example, you feel like this is not just a feature edit, it's like the whole new app, for example. So the design needs to be reviewed. So we don't want to do that for all the projects that we have. We don't want to do design review for all the projects. We have all these guidelines available for the team. We have like the quick reviews, as I mentioned. So we don't really want to go through all the designs. But if that's like a big project that cannot be covered in that scope, that's the time to bring that up. And we can definitely do the design review and threat modeling if necessary for that specific projects that's identified in this level. And then, of course, the last round could be security testing. By security testing, I don't specifically mean just pen testing. So even the code review could be the case. So you want to go into the code and make sure that they are, for example, doing the XML read correctly. For example, there is a JSON file that they're going to read. You want to make sure in the code that they are using the right libraries and they're using the right parsers, for example, for the JSON that they are reading, and there's no template injection, for example, possible in that level. So that's the part that you want to go into the code. So we have SaaS tools, and they're going to do probably some catch some low-hanging fruits. That's not something that we want to go and do review manually. We want to use, our judgment for something that cannot be found by the SaaS tools. For example, I said, like template injections, for example, or then looking at the configurations, like the CSV configurations, or if there are something internally made in the company and they need to configure some services, for example, you want to make sure that this configuration is done correctly. So it's something that what you want to look for, basically. I feel like that's the part that the manual code review should go. We can't really just have the code completely and say, okay, go and do the review, because what you want to find from that. So have targeted review, basically. And then, of course, penetration testing. So there was a feature, you saw some threat surface, some threat scenarios and some attack surface. You found it, and you want to check that to make sure that it's been done correctly. So then that's the time that you can do the penetration testing for that feature and product. Of course, if it's a complete new product, you might want to, and you have some, compliances and things to ask a third party to do a complete penetration testing for you. That's a different story. But this is what we want to do for all the projects that we have inside the company. So it's a different scope. You know what I mean? So we want to work with the developers closely on the features and the apps that they work on day to day, basically. So that's about it. But as you can see, in this process, the application security engineer still involved a lot. And think about some company with like 4,000 developers and many teams. So you cannot really have too many application engineers who can work on all these, even though you try to strip a lot of low or even medium risk. At some stage, you have to probably even don't look at the medium risk projects because you don't have the capacity. So there is a term that in the development that said you build it, you own it. It's like an agile term, and we kind of try to make it like in security, just translate it in security and say you develop it, so you have to own the security of your own product. So that's really the whole probably idea of scaling being possible. So you have to make the development team responsible for the security of their own product, because that's the time that you can basically scale. You can get them to help you and to work out on security. But of course, we are there to help. So we are basically like consultants working with the development team and helping them to own the security and work and uplift the security of their applications and products. Okay, why again? So I a little bit talked about it, but I'm going to probably go deeper into that. So why do we say that? Because as you know, developers know their applications much, much, much better than us. Even doing code reviews for developers, and you have to ask questions of them. For example, where's the input coming from? Where's the sinks? Where's the sync? Because it's not really like those days that you have all them in one application. You always have to interact with the developers, and they know better about the application, definitely much, much better than us. And of course, security team doesn't have capacity, cannot grow as the speed of the development team. We cannot really have like, I don't know, a good ratio of the development team in the security team. This is not even possible. So even like in a 4,000, a company with 4,000 developers, even if 1:100 ratio, you end up with 40 people in the application security team, which is like a dream come true if you have 40 application security engineer in one company.
How many is there? If there's, I'm assuming you're talking specifically with Atlassian. There's like
no, I'm not talking specifically to Atlassian in any company.
How many is there in Atlassian security?
So it's roughly Atlassian almost have 12,000 employees.
Yeah.
Not all of them, of course, are developers. And the application security team, which I'm excluding like vulnerability management and this part of the work. So it's probably like 80 or something. Yeah. Not even 80 probably. So because there are still some people working on the vulnerability management. So it's just like a rough estimate. It's really hard. It's really hard to do that. And of course, even 1:100 ratio, it's still a lot. So one person working with 100 developers, it's still a lot. So that's definitely, I think, clearly makes the point that we really need to get the help from the developers, and we really need to make them equipped to work on and own the security of their own products. So how do we do that? So of course, training is really important. This is definitely the first thing that we need to do. We need to do secure code training with all these different platforms that we have available for security training, like working on even brown bag sessions, bringing up like security champion programs and all these sort of things to try to upskill security knowledge inside the development team. And believe me, they really love security. When they come into these like sort of like CTFs, which is internally built, and you can see a lot of passion in the development team and just like how they really like to learn and even hack their own applications. And there's also some other sort of training that we need to do that's suitable for this security review process that we are building up. Because we want them to do it quickly. We want them to go through this template that we provide to them. So it could be a framework, it could be a template, it could be a service. It could have. It's very good if it has a lot of questions and answers already. So when they go through these questions, they get a lot of recommendations out of that. But still, it's just like recommendations. So we want them to have this security hat on, like threat modeling. Idea, for example. So when they want to do this light threat modeling on their own application, they know what they want to look for. So because it feels like it's a very mouth-feeling term, and when you talk about threat modeling, people may feel like, okay, I'm scared, I don't really know what to look at. But basically, you just want to look into different components and how they interact to each other and think about all these different threat scenarios. So it's not more than that. But having this hat on and even training developers to be able to just like play these roles when they're doing the threat modeling, that's definitely important. So in my experience, the best threat modelings are the ones that the security engineer probably just sit aside and the team just does the talk. They just talk to each other. They try to even question each other and try to think about, okay, what do we do when, for example, this API is called? So, things like that. That's need to come with a little bit of training. So we can't just tell them, go and do this on your own. Just do the security review of your own project because we're responsible for that. We have to train them. And of course, something that I found very useful is peer reviewing their review. it's just giving them the feeling that, okay, we are safe. It's okay if we make mistakes. So just like being comfortable with doing the reviews themselves, because security is always scary. And when you talk to the developers that you say that I'm from security, they feel scared a little bit. Not just because security always give them a lot of work. It's just because they think about, oh, but getting hacked is going to damage the whole company and everything like that. So peer reviewing, it's going to give them assurance. At the same time, it's going to give us some good idea about how successful is the process that we are working on. Do we really need to change? Do we really need to modify some of the steps that we have already done? So that's basically it. So in our idea, basically based on our experience, the security team just prepares the security review framework for the teams, give them the tools, the frameworks, and the questionnaire and everything that they need, basically, and give them the support, consulting them through the journey. Training is definitely important, and you need to definitely train them and make them feel comfortable from that point. And then that's it. The development team is the main people who are accountable for running the security reviews. That's mostly it. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. I really hope to get some. So I would really love to hear from you now. So what do you think? First of all, if there is any questions.